representing Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a ZOR, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Hey, it's Eric here. Today I have Stacey Barnes with us. He's has franchisor experience, franchisee experience. He's done a lot in the training world for a franchisor, 20 years in building up an amazing training department. So we can talk about pre-training, initial training, advanced training, learning management systems, and really how to get crystal clear on the outcome on having a really good learning management system. And one of the favorite things we talked about, when he was getting into the training department, he asked the founder, what does winning look like for me as the trainer? What does winning look like? And that was clearly defined for him was you be the best business partner that franchisee has ever had. So we get into lots of cool stuff like that. Enjoy this episode with Stacey Barnes. Stacey, man, it's good to see your face. I know that we spent a lot of time in the past at different franchise organizations, and you've recently come in to help me, the franchisees and the franchisor mastermind. So that's been a lot of fun, and you've been, incredibly helpful there with your experience, both, especially in training, the training departments as a franchisee and from the franchisor side. So I wanted to spend some time today just talking about training, because there's so many people that listen to this podcast that are franchisors and they don't know what an amazing training department looks like. And there's franchisees that probably could use some help on helping their franchisors even level up their training department. So welcome, buddy.
Hey, thank you so much. It is awesome to be here. And this is obviously in my wheelhouse. It's a topic I'm passionate about, and really looking forward to the discussion.
So in addition to training for, from a franchisee franchisor standpoint, you're also deal with John Maxwell, and just give us a little bit more insight into your scope of work, what you've done.
Yes. So I hate to throw years at this because it shows the age, but right out of college in the very early 90s, I went to work for a computer company, which was my background. I have a technical background. And once a company kind of finds out that you are willing and at least reasonably capable to stand in front of a group, you tend to become a bit of a trainer. And so from a very early time in my career, I was going out on the road and teaching and training. Back then, it was training how to use our software packages. So learned a lot of lessons, learned a lot about what not to do in those days. But then it just kind of followed. So everywhere I've been, I've been a speaker, a trainer, teacher within the organization. And when I joined Liberty Tax Service back about 21 years ago, I came in again, from a technical side of things. So I came in as director of technical support for a while, but I saw some gaps in the training, the technical training specifically, and created a program for that. And then became training director for quite a long time, and spent most of that time just training, coaching, and developing franchisees. And throughout that time, you're always looking for new tips, new techniques. Leadership training was something that also I'm very passionate about leadership and its importance, the importance of it within any organization. So in 2011, I did become a founding partner on the John Maxwell team, which was very exciting. I had lots of new content that I could teach to my franchisees and help coach my franchisees. It was really, really awesome. And then it just kind of got to the point after 20 years with the company that I was starting to feel that itch to do something else. And so I parted on good terms. I still go back and help with some of their events, but I'm now a part of a different franchise called Focal Point Business Coaching and Training. And it was founded by Brian Tracy, a pretty big name in the sales and personal development space for a very long time. And what I get to do now and where I spend my time now is one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and doing a lot of training and facilitating and speaking.
So some of the group coaching that he does is in the franchisee mastermind and the franchisor mastermind. I know people have loved that. When you were like, you were aging yourself, you were dating yourself. Was that before like floppy disk time?
100%. And so just one quick story, you learn a lot when you're in front of a group live. And as a 22-year-old, I fly to Texas. I'm in front of the group to present this product. And we have this wonderful new thing. Everybody's working either from DOS-based computers or dummy terminals hooked to a mini computer back in those days. And we had created a package that nobody else could do. You could have 20 people in the system at the same time creating work orders. They could all hit enter at exactly the same time and no duplication at all. And so I get in front of this first group. I'm excited to show them this great feature that we've been able to put together. I go, on the count of 3, everybody hit enter. 1, 2, 3. What did you get? 1. What did you get? 1. What did you get? 1. It totally bombed. And so from the very beginning, I was kind of learning, well, how do I juggle this? How do I save face? How do I fix what happened? But in front of a live audience, you never know. And the best way to learn is just to get out and do it.
So if you need any technical support with your Commodore 64, Stacey is your man. All right, let's talk about like training department. So as a franchisor, let's say they're a new franchisor. I want to talk about new franchisors, and I want to talk about franchisors that have an established base of franchisees and how to make a training department amazing. But a new franchisor starting out, like what would you advise them from building out their training department or helping their franchisees with the thing that they do?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just to treat it with the importance that it really deserves and really needs. I think sometimes training is kind of an afterthought. We've got the system in place. We've put together some things. But still, when you really get down to it, a lot of what's needed to be in the training system is still somewhere stuck up here with the people that have done it up to that point. And so there needs to be a lot of thought. There needs to be a lot of clarity. What are the key things that we need someone to leave? What are the learning objectives? What are the key things that they really need to take away from this to be successful? And that requires thought. It requires design. And right now, the biggest mistake I'm seeing people make, regardless if they're brand new or they've been doing this forever, we all had to flip the switch all of a sudden from our traditional training model to the Zoom-based training model. And it's not the same. And so one of the big crutches I see people falling back on is they think that technology and quick videos are the answer, when in reality, it's just a tool. It has to be part of a really strategic training plan that's going to set your franchisees up for success.
So when you were talking about taking information out of the founder's mind, or maybe the district operational manager or the COO's mind because they've done it, or maybe there's some franchisees that are really good at it and the founder's been removed from it for a little bit, how do you practically, like step by step, extract that information? Because I'm guessing it's not the founder that's saying, hey, I'm so excited to like tell you all about this training stuff. It's somebody that knows training, knows how to take that information and do something with it. So like what are the practical steps that a founder should be taking to extract that knowledge base and put it into a training tool?
And that's a great question. And I wish I could tell you that there's a switch we could flip for this one too, but there just really isn't. It's going to take a little time. And the best place to get this down is to go where the action is happening. So wherever the services are being conducted, wherever the products are being sold, that's where we need someone to sit and spend time just going through and watching what happens, documenting what happens. And obviously this can be at one of the original stores or units that maybe the founder started with, or it could be with one of your franchisees that you're using for validation, but it obviously needs to be one that's operating flawlessly. And we just need to document that. And when you're bringing in, let's say, new franchisee training, the ultimate goal is for them to walk out of that training with a leg up so that they can hit the ground running and be successful. And it's very difficult. Most traditional training, and I'm guilty of this for sure, I'm a speaker, sometimes more than a trainer, but within the first hour after a lecture, 50% of retention is gone. After a day, you're down to about 20 to 25% retention of what was in there. And so as you're watching how these things do, what we have to what we kind of have to design at that point is how can we get this training in a way that we can make it informative, we can make it interactive, and we can include all of the things of adult learning, which would be, if it's video, the video needs to include a written portion where they're following along in a workbook. It needs to include a live interaction portion. It needs to take as many of the senses of the learner as we can incorporate into the training for it to really come together. And so as you're out there and you're documenting all the best practices of these are the things that we must focus on to make sure that we give them a leg up, you have to also be focusing on what stories am I learning while I'm out here? Because in order to increase retention, one of the key things you can do in that training is tie it back to a real example, to tie it back to something that's already in their neural network. So maybe it's an analogy, but the examples of real life stuff is where you tend to get the biggest connection and help with that retention. So you're out there. So you need someone who's a really good implementer, really good at documenting systems, and they just kind of tag along for as long as it takes to really put this down. And then you design your training program around that.
So I heard you say earlier documenting, and then you came back around and said someone that can, enjoys doing that. So that's probably not the trainer. Like, who is that person that's going to document, and how do they document? Do they pull out a phone that has video on it? Do they pull out, also record that with audio, like with otter.ai? What does documenting look like? What is that person doing? And then what do they do with that information?
So on the first part of the question, yes, any and everything. So whether it's video, audio, I'm a notorious note taker. I have notebooks filled with notes all over the place around here. There needs to be interviews with people. Why did you do this the way you did? Have you tried doing it this way? What happened? Because again, you're trying to elicit absolute best practices, but also a couple of stories here or there you can incorporate. So the personality type for this is someone who is very organized, someone who is just really into learning something new, because if they're going to get the most out of this, they've got to go in there with a passion for really digging into this, and then the skill set of putting it in a usable form. Now, once you get back and you've got it, then what we do is we start looking at, okay, what is going to be the mode that we're going to deliver this training? And then you'd kind of design your delivery around whatever mode it's going to be. So if it's going to be online, is it going to be in person? Is it going to be in a combination? And you start designing the pieces that are going to best fit your audience. So it's never about what we as trainers want to say. It's about what does the audience really need to hear. And we have to focus on their needs first and foremost at all times, and then design the way that we can connect with them the best. And then, obviously, we talk, I'm sure we're going to get into pre-training and post-training and things like that. There should be some things they do before the event. If it's a training event, there should be some things they do during, and then there should be some things they do after in order to get the retention where we want it to be.
So let's dive deeper into the documenting, because I can just see if founders are anything like me, they're just like, okay, where do I find that person that can go document? And then can I outsource that to somebody? Or is that a trainer like you that puts it all together? Or can you outsource that to give to the trainer?
No, I think it could totally be outsourced. A lot of larger companies with their internal training departments, there's a saying that the training department doesn't own anything. The department that we're going to be training, they own the material, they own everything. They just feed it to the trainer in a way that we can then package it into a format that will actually make the most benefit to the learners that we're going to have coming through. So this is the same thing. It just it doesn't have to be the trainer, but it could be. A lot of times, if you've got a really good trainer, I can see a lot of benefit to them being the one that goes out and spends the time in the store. As you remember, when we were together at Liberty, we had a rule on my training team. No one was going to be on the training team that didn't either own or manage a store. They had to have physical time in the store before I would put them up in front of an audience. That's not always practical, but if you can get them in there just to get the feel, because as a trainer, when I stand up in front of the group, I can cover a lot of things, but when they start asking specific day-to-day questions about what happens in that unit, it's tough if you've never stood in there and really taken the slings and arrows that comes with serving the public in that specific setting.
So if I don't have a trainer, I've got a franchise, I don't have a trainer, is this trainer somebody with franchising experience, or would you look at getting a trainer that just has training experience?
Man, I would love both, and it's just not always feasible. And right now, we know there's a definite war for talent going on at every level that we're trying to hire. So it's increasingly difficult to find. Some of the things I'm looking for in a key trainer, I like training experience, I like skills, I like knowledge. But most importantly is what do they bring to the table from an attitude standpoint and from an ability to connect with people? Because the training department, they should be the torchbearers for your culture. Everything they do should establish the culture that you want to develop within your corporate franchisor side, and that you want to be shared with every franchisee on the franchisee side. They should be the torchbearers. And so if I have someone that is able to connect with people, the skills of speaking in public, the skills of training are immensely learnable. And so if I'm going to bring somebody in, personally, I'm going to look for somebody that's got the attitude that I know that they can grow into the position. Now, if I'm hiring right now and I don't do any of this and I don't want any part of it, then I'm going to look for someone that does have some experience speaking, training. And if I can get someone that's been out in the field, the great. If not, I'm going to put them in there before I put them up in front of my people.
It makes sense. All right. So we're talking about initial training right now, basically taking whatever the main thing is in the business and having that documented. So this is the beginning of somebody being able to have a training so they could go implement the business right away. Beyond that, there's different types of training. There's hands-on training. There's, extra training. There's all kinds of other things after that. Quick question on that. Then I want to go back to pre-training. What's it like franchisees that are coming in there, they've signed their agreements, they're getting ready to go. And most of the time they're pretty excited and overwhelmed in that initial training versus taking a franchisee and taking them through advanced training, after they've been around a couple of times. Like what's the like in your mind, what's the difference between those two types of training?
Man, it can be night and day. And it also depends on the level of the franchisee that comes to the advanced training though, because if they've kind of stumbled along the way and are almost starting over, then there's not that big of a difference. But the new franchisees that come in, it is like drinking through a fire hose for pretty much any franchise system that you're going to join, because you're learning all the things you thought you knew how the thing worked, because maybe you visited a location, you did your due diligence and talked to franchisees, and you think you know exactly how this thing's going to work. And then all of a sudden you're getting blasted with all this information. And generally at the very first trainings, there's a lot of things that if we can do in the pre-work so that I don't have to deal with it at training, it's a lot better, because it's almost a waste of a first day when I have to stand up and tell you how to get your insurance and how to set up your bank accounts and how many bank accounts do you need and how about my payroll. Those are kind of things that are very, very important. But when it comes to really getting somebody off on how do you run and operate my system, it's probably something that I'd rather do in pre-work and have done, and then let's focus on actual operations and how can I be successful when they actually get to the event. So that first training for a new franchisee, a lot of it is just drinking through the fire hose and trying to speak in a way without using too much jargon or too much, kind of acronyms and things. It has to be done at a very basic level, where when it gets down to the advanced, you can start focusing on more a lot of my advanced trainings are more focused on leadership topics, where we can really start to dive in. How can Eric improve so that he's a better developer of people and a better developer of his overall organization, and not just that one unit. And so you kind of shift into a more of a coaching mode and an advanced training, and a little bit less of an informational mode.
So let's talk about the things that should be covered in pre-training. So someone signs their franchise agreement, they've paid their money, they are a franchisee, depends on the system and all of this on when they can actually go to a live training or their main training. But what do you think are some of the things that should be covered pre-training?
It's really anything that's paperwork. I don't want to be shuffling paperwork in and out at an actual event. And I may have some folks disagree with this, but a lot of companies, what they do with the pre-training is they send it out. They'll send out videos, they'll send out DocuSigns, they'll send out all these things to help, but there's not a lot of hands-on. Let me just talk to you about how this should work and how this should look. And I think we're over dependent on the technology side of this, and we need to get back to the people side.
Well, you're coming from you're pretty old fashioned. I mean, you're talking like pre-floppy disk, Commodore 64. So of course you would think that.
No, well, I tell you what, the number one thing, and I've been out, I've visited tons of franchisees through the years, hundreds and hundreds, and you can go into a unit, you can do a face-to-face visit with a manager or a franchisee, and really walk away feeling like, I don't know if I did anything to help them, and they'll say that was the most important thing that's been done. Every time, I cannot believe that somebody cared enough to come out and just see how I'm doing. If we were to take that same attitude with that initial training and say, hey, look, we're going to send you a lot of stuff and it may get confusing. Let's just take a minute here and talk through what you're going to receive and how it's going to work. And if you have any questions whatsoever, this is who to call. This is how to get help. And we're going to be here to guide you through. I'm a firm believer that a franchisor, if your goal isn't to be the best business partner your franchisee's ever had, I think you're missing the point of being a franchisor. And part of being the best business partner a franchisee has ever had is at sometimes holding their hand, especially in these early days of getting them off on that good start.
I love that. The goal is to be as a franchisor, my goal is to be the best business partner that you've ever had. When did you start framing it that way?
Well, I learned it early on from John Hewitt. I think he's been a guest on your podcast here before. And that was always our mission. It was to keep the franchisee first and focused. So when I made the jump, it was, it's not always someone that goes from a technology, because we're not always known as the most, talkative and upfront people. A lot of times we're in the background. So it was a little bit of an odd jump to go from technology to training. And so my question when I made that move in that organization was, I know how to win on this side of the house because I've done it for a long time. How do I even define what winning looks like on the training side of the house? And the answer that came back was, I need you to be, we've created something really special here. I need you to be the torchbearer for this culture, because if we can share this with every franchisee, we're going to win, no questions asked. And so a big part of what I've learned through the years and that I've seen work, it includes nuts and bolts, but nuts and bolts are not necessarily the most important thing. It's about the tone. It's about the attitude. It's about mindset. I mean, think how impactful it would be if we could get the vast majority of our franchisees in our system with a mindset that this culture is wonderful. It's a great place to be. I'm happy to wake up every morning, instead of the mindset of, I'm not exactly sure what my royalties are going towards.
Yep.
And the training department can be a huge part of that if you structure it right.
So let's talk about practically, like what's the balance of having face-to-face interaction, like actual face-to-face interaction over a Zoom one-on-one or over a Zoom group coaching versus just sending out videos, just talking pre-training. So like in your mind, if you were creating a training department for a franchisor, somebody signs agreements, and then the training department has the key person, their main person from the training department reaches out to them, has a call kind of letting them know everything that they're going to experience, and maybe having a weekly call or a call every other week. How would you what's the balance of getting them information that they can just do versus spending time on the phone with them? And I hate meetings. So in my mind, I'm just like, that's just another meeting. But at the same time, that's a touch point that's valuable to somebody that bought into an organization and paid a lot of money for it.
Yes. So, and I guess I'll tread lightly here. It's a little bit self-serving for me as a coach and trainer to say, I think coaching and training is really, really important, and everyone should have a weekly meeting with their coach. So it's a little self-serving to say it, but I think especially after the first training, well, and let's just start with the pre-training. I definitely think one face-to-face where we get them set up for what's coming, and at least one more where we just make sure that they're on track and that they're getting things done before they get to the actual training event. Then we're going to give the great event. And then after that, for whatever period of time is going to make the most sense for your system, there needs to be some sort of a strong start, kickstart training where once a week you're just touching base with them to make sure that they are still on track and doing the things that they need to do. And you can kind of be their guide. And I know in some organizations there might be a handoff from training to an operations team at that point. But I'm a firm believer that the training team should be a vital part of the operations team. And so it should be an effort that we can work on together. And again, as the trainer, I want to be the torchbearer for the company, for the culture, and for helping these folks be successful. But when you're meeting weekly, again, sometimes it's just that feeling that somebody cares enough that I'm getting what I'm paying for with the support that I need. But most importantly, with this follow-up training, what I've learned, I can go into an organization. I offer training programs based on time management and sales and mindset and positive thinking. I've got lots of different training programs, and I can go in and compete with any of the other training programs that are out there. The one difference that I offer from others is I can back it up with follow-up. And I already mentioned that the retention from a standard training is incredibly low. When we do the follow-up and we go in and we're able to ask intentional questions and have checkpoints that we know we want them to get to, you're going to be much more successful at getting them along the way and getting them to where you want them to be after the month and second month and third month if you follow that plan.
So we've talked about pre-training. We've talked about that initial training, which is typically a week, 5 days, 4 days, just depending on what you put in the disclosure document and what you feel like you need. So pre-training, initial training, and then there's more learning management that can happen, ongoing training, different types of things. So what have you learned over the years about like a good learning management system, producing training that can be updated and out to franchisees that is easy to do, easy to consume, and it's helpful?
So there are roughly 1,000 competitive LMS systems on the market. So the key to this is, again, utilize it for what it is. It's a tool. And so when you're looking at these, it can get overwhelming, and it can get overwhelming to the point that you just, want to wash your hands of it if you're not careful. But know what your budget is, know what your training style is going to be. So is it going to be mostly people that are in-house? Am I really looking at this as a corporate related thing where maybe I can tag on to an HR system or CRM system? Or is it going to be a really big franchise type of a deal where I'm training thousands of people dispersed across the world? All of those are going to make you choose a different LMS and a different way of handling things. So what I would say is you got to get crystal clear on who you're training and what the learning styles and skills and things need to be. You understand clearly with great clarity what your budget is. And then within that realm, you start looking for the systems that are out there. Whatever system you pick, you're going to get into and think, man, this was not what I was expecting. Very rarely are you going to get into it and say, man, I kicked it out of the park with this one. So just know going in that there are going to be some things it does that you love. There's going to be some things it'll do that you hate and you wish it did differently. But again, based on your budget, based on the things that you've got to train, make a decision and then manage the decision. Now, the things you want to be able to get out there is, I want to be able on a moment's notice to reach my audience that I need to get into. So whether that is through something like Teams, if I'm working from a Microsoft environment, or working through a huge Slack network, whatever it might be, I want some way that I can get a message out really quick. And so again, we can't rely on one communication method. We're going to hit them every way we can to get to those franchisees that are dispersed possibly across the world. So the LMS is a vital part of it, but you can't get away from email, from messaging systems, from your internal intranet that you've probably got in place, any and everything. You've got to continue getting the message out if you want it to click. Even as a leader, when you're casting your vision, vision leaks over time. As soon about the time you feel like I can't talk about this anymore, I'm really overwhelmed, that's about when people are starting to listen. You just have to keep hitting it. So just understand that an LMS isn't an end all be all. It is simply a tool, and get great clarity on what you really need it for and use it for that.
So Stacey, they have a lot of top 10 lists, top 5 lists of different tools out there. So what's your top 1, 2, 3, 5 LMSs?
And that's a very, very difficult question.
You've been skirting around some of these questions, so I'm going to have to come in hard and and really hit you hard with some of this stuff. So there's Trainual. That's one that people use. Are there some others that you'd want to throw around that are some, maybe some good things or bad things, or this is high budget, low budget, too much? Lightspeed's another one. Give me some perspective. Give the audience of franchisors that are begging you, give me something, Stacey. Do it for them, not for me. Do it for them.
Yeah. I hate to do this to you, but I'm telling you, my experience is they're all so similar. The differences are just are incredibly minute a lot of times. And if we say one, there could be something slightly different in your system that means that's not the one. So the best way to do this is to have someone we can talk to, we can ask a few questions. Because again, I need to know, what are your plans? How do you plan to use it? What's going to be the audience? Where is the audience going to be located? Is it going to be, what type of videos are you doing? For a lot of people starting out, we started this out with new franchisors. You can do a lot of this through a very simple system like Camtasia and recordings and very low budget, do everything you need to do to get off the ground with a handful of your first franchisees. So a lot of these other systems are just overkill if we're talking about brand new franchisees. If I'm talking about a 3,000 unit franchisor, then it's completely different. I've got to have a much more robust system. So again, if you'll send me, these are the specs of what I've got and what I'm doing, then I can make a really informed decision for you. But it really just depends. And I hate that answer, but it's the right answer at this time.
Well, I hate it even more than you hate it right now. You did give us something. You gave the new franchisees some help there. And I agree with you that you can do that. You could even do it in like a Dropbox or a Google Doc where you could have some links, whether it's a Loom video that you're doing when you're showing them something on your computer, how to go do, you could, as a franchisor, like if you could just do a video that shows them how to do something in new software that they have or something, just do Loom. And there's a number of different video captures like that. And just,
as simple as putting one of these on a private YouTube channel that everyone goes to for training, it could be as simple as that and be effective. When we back, and this still was in the floppy disk days, back in the floppy disk days, I signed an early contract with WebEx. And that's exactly how we used WebEx primarily, was we used that to record. And then when I needed to get a message blasted out to as many people as possible, we could go live and get people to come on. And there were still a lot of people on dial-up in those days. So it was quite different. But even back then, exactly what you just said was working. It's just now, you can determine how many bells and whistles do I really want to pay for.
And if the more bells and whistles that you have, the more complexity that it is for franchisees and for the franchisor and for the team. Even within the masterminds that I've started, we started out with just a private Facebook group, and we would give content to them in these private Facebook groups. And then we moved more to a program called circle.io. And there's been a bunch of them before Circle, but Circle's been the best one. And we didn't move to it until a number of people that I knew had masterminds that needed to upload really good content for their members, password protected and this, that, and the other. And after I saw about 5 of them that had done it for an extended period of time and they were happy with it, then we made the move. But if you're trying to do too much too soon, you don't always need to do that. And you can take those videos and these things and upload those to the learning management software when the time comes. So if you're growing slow, you don't need to have all of that stuff in place. But now let's say you have 50 franchisees, or let's say you have 20 franchisees, and in 1 to 2 years, you're going to have 50 to 60 franchisees, and you want to build it like you have 60 to 100 franchisees. What would you use then?
Yeah, so there it's going to start getting more complex, and there's some questions I would ask you. What are you using for your
Ask me.
So what are you using for your CRM that you're going to be having as your backbone for this?
ActiveCampaign or HubSpot.
Now, have you determined which is going to plug in? What learning management systems will definitely plug into your CRM that you're using already?
Yeah, most of them will, because it's HubSpot and everything works with HubSpot or ActiveCampaign.
Most of them will. However, have you seen it in practice where things you really think are going to come in? So again, there's going to need to be some design to work around it. So whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce, whatever it is, there are tons of products that'll plug in and they'll say, oh, it's going to plug in seamlessly. Do your due diligence, because they don't always plug in seamlessly without some custom additional cost programming to make everything happen. What are we feeding data to? So what are your back-end systems that are housing your data? What does your data storehouse look like? Is that going to be affected in any way? What are your needs as far as certifications? Are you in an industry that's going to requires that you track certifications and that you track testing, because that's a completely different thing than a standard learning management system that's going to allow you to put curriculum out there. You're going to need to be able to design testing. You're going to want to be able to design, again, something that's going to feed the tracking data that you're going to need to show to prove that everyone on this team is where they need to be. They're fully certified and capable and ready to go. So again, there's tons and tons of questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my due diligence, and I'm going to talk to other franchisors, which makes your mastermind incredibly powerful, because that's where you learn these things. What have you tried that has worked? What have you tried that hasn't? I can look, and it's going to be different by industry. It's going to be different by size. But by sticking in groups like this, you're going to be able to ask those questions and say, this is my situation. This is how many I've got. This is the industry I'm in. What have we got? Anybody got anything like it? I'll guarantee if that question went out on your Facebook page right now, it would immediately get answers. It's amazing how much information goes out on that page, and really good information too.
Yeah. And that's a free one. Go to franchisesecretsgroup.com, and there's so much good free information that happens on that. But I love where we went with that, Stacey, because there's so much that matters. And even the things that you don't think matter actually matters. Like, you think just because they say HubSpot integrates with Trainual or Teachable or whatever it is, how does it integrate? How easy is it? And HubSpot's different than some of these other ones, than Salesforce. So there's a lot of complexity to it, but it can make your life really easy once you've got that up and going and dialed in and whatnot. So, all right, I'll leave you alone with learning management now. So let's talk about ongoing training, and we can go anywhere with this. Like, maybe they just get open, it's hands-on training, or before grand opening or after grand opening, or advanced training. So training goes way beyond new franchisee training. So talk to me about some of your favorite things about ongoing training.
Awesome. So, after anything I do, I always like to do a review with myself, knowing what I know now, what would I do different? So based on what we've just gone through, I've got to get an affiliate link for one or the other of these learning management systems.
Yeah, you do.
Just become a shill. Become a shill for whichever one.
You teached up the mastermind. Great. Like, hey, I've got the one thing that you should have, but in order to get it, you have to join Eric's Franchisor Mastermind. I love how you did that. Or next time you'll have an affiliate link, and you'll make like $1 every time you say something.
Right. Yeah. So knowing what I know now, I'm going to be different the next time we do this. But I love ongoing training. And one of the things that I learned back when I joined the Maxwell team, in particular, is Maxwell Leadership now, and I'm still affiliated with them too. It just really hit home the importance of teaching leadership skills to franchisees. So many of us get into franchising because we like doing what the franchise does. And so we find ourselves just caught every day. You think I'm getting out of the rat race, but really all you did was you bought just another maze. You didn't really get out at all. You're still stuck right in, and it's just different. And so one of the things I like to do with the ongoing training is just really spending more time on pulling people from in the business to on the business and change that mindset. And so we started early. We start that training in the initial training. So I love doing mindset training and goal setting as part of the initial training. But it has to be backed up with consistent ongoing training after that to keep people in that right mindset. But the key things I work with folks on right now, and no franchisee is going to be any different than this. We deal with issues of team. How can I build a stronger, better team? So we're talking about that through training now. How can I be better with managing my time? And so we all have the same amount of time, but we have to be better at managing ourselves within the time we have allotted. And that's an incredibly important leadership skill that we can teach through ongoing training. That can be done through more impactful delegation, teaching delegation skills, teaching better, again, time management, efficiency skills, and things like that. But it's really important to keep that going along. The other thing I work on a lot, obviously money's important, growth is important. And so this training should be focused on making sure your franchisees are absolutely as successful as they can be. So the ongoing training should be taking, here's what we've learned over the last 6 months, 12 months in our system. Now, here's what we're going to teach you so that you can be even more successful than you were when you got here. So it's kind of like we're going to take the newer best practices that we're learning as we're going and then implementing those system wide after we've given them the proper vetting and testing that we're going to do. So team, time, money, and then the one where I get a lot of folks don't really put a lot of thought in, it seems to me, in franchising, is going to be more strategy related and really exit strategy. So whether it's an executive I'm doing executive coaching with, or a franchisee I'm doing business coaching with, they're really excited about the position or the thing, but they haven't thought, how do I really want to get out of this? What is going to be a successful exit? And so part of your ongoing training can be in just standard strategic planning, or maybe even something they haven't really thought about, but succession and exit planning to make sure that they get out the way they want to get out.
Stacey, we're going to have to do a second podcast on basically next level training for franchisees, because the things that you just mentioned are not what most franchisors are thinking about with training. And it's absolutely important. And so let's do another podcast on kind of advanced training that franchisors do for their franchisees. But we'll record that later on this summer. So with that, how do you as a trainer extract really good information from top performing franchisees, or how do you help top franchisees become even better franchisees? Because a lot of franchisors are trying to focus on the average and make them a little bit better. They're not focused on the top, trying to make them even better.
Yeah, we used to go back to the book by Greg Nathan, Profitable Partnerships, and he would take you through the stages of the mindset of the franchisee. But when you're looking at the franchisor, the goal is to kind of take that typical bell curve and shift it so that we get more people on the positive side of that curve. And it's not easy, obviously, to do this, because the key to doing this is listening. And very few of us have good listening skills. We have to be active listeners, and it's time consuming. Again, we want to just send out the quick survey. What's the best thing you did? What'd you learn? How did this go? How did that go? And you want to look at this survey and think that that's going to solve all your problems. If you're really going to find something that's going to change your business, change the lives of your franchisees or your system as a whole, you really need to dig a little deeper, because you need to ask the questions. And when they say, one of the best things I did was this, that's not enough. They can put that on a survey, but what we need to find out is, well, how did you do this? And the reason I'm very passionate about this is I've seen it. You can look at two franchisees running side by side, and from a 20,000 foot view, you'd say, well, they're both doing the same thing. Why is this one so much more successful? But when you get on the ground and you see what they're actually doing, this one is executing at a level it's different. This one is checking a box. This one is actually executing. And so when you're learning these things and you're finding out what works, you've got to listen, and you've got to ask a lot of open-ended questions to really find out, why did this work? Because if something could work and it's just a fluke, it's the environment, it's just the way the market is right now, or it could be something that's like, man, this is wonderful, and we need everybody doing it tomorrow. But we don't know for sure from a quick survey. I love surveys. I give out evals, but they're limited, and I know they're limited in how I should be taking that information. I want to dig deeper, and I want to listen, truly listen to what's being said.
Stacey, this has been fun. How can people find you?
Yeah, so I am, again, Focal Point Business Coaching and Training. My email address, I think we're going to have it available for everyone, but it's sbarnes@focalpointcoaching.com. Or you can go to my website. It's coachstaceyb.com, STACEYB.com. So coachstaceyb.com. On that, I've got a couple of tools that I provide for folks free of charge. There's a business scorecard. So you can go on there, you can go through about a 10-minute survey. It'll tell you what how you're stacking up from a standpoint of what I've learned from really franchising. And so I've tailored a couple of these specifically for franchising. There's another one that's a team scorecard that I've got out there that's available as well, to kind of gauge how you're doing in training and growing your team. And so those are helpful. It comes with a 26-page report that you can dig into exactly some things you need to work on. And once it comes, I've got a no obligation 20-minute call if you want to just pop in and ask me a few questions about it. Always open to help people out.
Well, two things I just learned there. One, I need an affiliate link so I can make a ton of money off of your coaching. Number two, you can just upsell everybody into the masterminds. No, joking with all of that, but really Stacey's a giver. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's a good friend of mine. He gives to both of the franchise communities in the mastermind. And so definitely take him up on that. He's just such a great guy. So we'll see you next time when we talk about advanced training techniques for franchisors helping franchisees. Sound good?
That sounds wonderful. Can't wait.
Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.